Welcome to Chatter, no frills tech news with the top 5 stories of the day straight from the app. Today we talk about AI friends on Facebook, ghost music on Spotify, robots learning faster than ever, test time compute, and avoiding messy code. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And our first story, how Meta made AI friends come and leave again. Meta envisions AI bots fully integrated into social platforms as regular profiles. And this is a fascinating story because on the surface it's very weird and you can't even imagine it that you would be connected to just an AI profile and not your friends because it's not the initial use case of that platform. However, it makes sense for them, at least. Just imagine, and this is really the thought experiment. If you have friends, be it on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even on YouTube, and they're posting content that you really enjoy and you consume it regularly, does it really matter if it's AI generated or not? Obviously, it's you don't know all the people by in person that you've connected with in these on these social platforms, so it wouldn't be any different from some of the profiles you probably connected with. And for Facebook, obviously, the big advantage is that because there might be better content that you engage with, you are more frequently on the platform. That means they can sell you more ads. So it might be a win. However, given the public backslash that Facebook now experienced with their little project, they're pulling back their profiles. But if you ask me, it's just for the time being because eventually it will come. Now, next up, we are talking about Spotify and a very similar story. Because are you listening to ghost music on Spotify? Spotify's Perfect Fit content program is an internal initiative designed to provide cheaper music for its mood-based and background playlist. So why do I say it's similar to our first story? In a sense that it's also about private labeling and driving engagement with lower cost, right? Because like for Facebook, it was they have to acquire customers to post content, which is expensive. And for Spotify, every time you listen to a song, they have to pay royalties. However, if they can substitute some of the songs with cheaper stock music, they can save a lot of money, right? They don't have to pay these royalties. So on playlists, let's say nice guitar music, you may have some Santana music that is very interesting, but it's just maybe 20% of the songs that you listen to is AI generated, is stock music. And this is 20% in cost savings that Spotify has. So it's very valuable to them. And most users probably won't even notice it specifically if it's just background music. But I can imagine there might be some playlists where they might be more aggressive with it. Like if I would listen to 90s pop playlist and there are songs that I don't really recognize, it wouldn't resonate as well. So it would make a worse product. And that's obviously the risk. So I imagine that Spotify will be tinkering and experimenting in what sort of playlist, what sort of playing styles they can insert these cheaper music, what they now label as ghost music. All right, next up we talk about robots. Robots now learn decades of skills in just a few minutes. Robotics company Genesis can train robots 430,000 times faster than reality using 3D simulations. And as always with all these stories, you can read it straight in the app, the full story, not just my commentary. So the premise of the story is really that in the past, how robots trained was they set them on parkours, and that's how a robot learned from trial and error, walking upstairs, going down slopes, and it's really expensive and very slow. So what they are now doing is they basically created a software world where the robot is virtually training, and they can do this at the same time in multiple worlds, so it's just significantly faster. It's really science fiction style, our science fiction style story for the day, but it's reality, right? These are hard gains that are not easily to argue with. 1 hour of compute time gives a robot 10 years of training experience. So that's a paradigm shift that is happening right now. A lot of people say, for instance, on the AI podcast, they say 2025 could be the year of the robot. And they say this because you have two technologies that are now converging with AI being so much better and then the hardware becoming of age as well. So the only thing missing, and that's my commentary, is what is the actual use case for these robots? Because they're too expensive to be just, to cook my pasta at home or throw it in the trash. So there's still niche use cases where they could start with to make this a viable product. But I mean, the technology is there, so it's now all about finding the use case. All right, now next topic is test time compute can do more with less. 3 billion parameter llama models outperform 70 billion models on MAR 500 with optimized test time compute. So test time compute, and I said this before, is going to be my word of the year, at least I imagine it to be, because it's so important for large language models. It's so important for everything that is happening in AI right now. Why? It's because it improves reasoning by a landslide, by so much you can't even imagine it. And so basically what test time compute does is it gives more time to think. It gives more time to the model to think. And by using sort of like a chain of thought approach rather than just responding from pre-trained text that the model already knows, it improves specifically on reasoning tasks where it's good, where you have a first step informing the second informing the third, etc., and then feeding it back, putting it all together, checking if it makes sense, doing maybe a web search, pre-trained model, doing a mix. So there's just so much potential with this technique, I would say. And the fact that this small model is now outcompeting much proves that smaller models are now competing in that space. And it's more about what knowledge you have with pre-training necessarily, but now you can actually, if you have the money and the resources and understand the technology, you can deploy agents that are using this technique and get very good results. And lastly, this is our advice session for our friends. How not to sabotage your ML career with messy code. Jupyter notebooks used by over 10 million users worldwide might be hard to debug, quote unquote. This is a story that is dear to my heart because I think if you are a self-taught developer or you grew up just by problem solving certain things like I did, rather than going through like a structured curriculum in a university or a bootcamp or whatever, you sort of never learn how to do things properly. You just do it in your own style. And what this article is really a reminder of, that the best practices are just so important when you're working within an organization and you're creating code that is pushed to a shared repo that is picked up by other people as well, that is part of a larger application. And so documentation, how you structure functions, is just so important. And using the right tools will certainly go a long way. That being said, I think the key thing from this article is there's obviously a lot of best practices that are easy to follow, like config files let you easily control all of the parameters that define in the experiment, make sure you push code frequently to GitHub, package managers, etc., etc. So they're good pieces of advice, I would say, on what to avoid. But at the end of the day, it's really every company is different, every team is different, and every project is different. Because what I'm seeing, at least in working with data science teams specifically, is that there are real trade-offs between flexibility and allowing everyone to just do their work and come to a conclusion quickly, and standardization. So something that is being used, production grade value that can be in the application long term or even come to production. But if you're not at that stage, there might be other things that are more important. So these real trade-offs are, I think, important when you're starting a new project to consider in terms of how sophisticated you might want to get. So with that, that's the end of the story, the end of the 5 stories for today. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. See you in the next one.